kind of got to stand on the giants that came before you and figure out what is the next step. What is that 1 millimeter further than anyone else has dared to go, which is go beyond.
Hi, and welcome to Helping People Perform, the podcast that gives you fascinating insights into those people whose chosen vocation is to help others perform at their best. From consultants to teachers, sports coaches to financial advisors, all of my guests share a passion for getting the most out of individuals, teams, and organisations. Enjoy the episode. Hi everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Helping People Perform podcast. Today I'm delighted to be joined all the way from Germany by Patrick Cowden, who's the founder and chief architect at the Beyond company. So Patrick, thanks so much for joining me today.
Thank you, Paul. Pleasure, honor, and I'm glad to be here with you. Thank you.
Fantastic. So just to hit one thing before we really get kicked off, that's not a German accent we're hearing, is it?
No, that's a little bit of hillbilly slang from the United States of America, mixed in with the 37 times I've moved around the world into about 24 cities. So it's kind of mixed up, and that's because my dad was a drill sergeant and a command sergeant major in the Army. My mom was a Fräulein from Germany. So I kind of grew up in all these different cultures. So I mean, my German is actually better than my English. So that's crazy. Thank you.
Fantastic. Well, let's get into it then. Let's hear a bit more about that backstory. What is it that got you to where you are today? What have you done to get you here? You talk about your family moving across all the way around the world. And tell us a bit more about that richness of Patrick's backstory.
Yes, yeah. Well, I'm not sure I'd call it a richness. It was kind of more chaos and confusion, So my dad was in the Army, as I said, and we moved around a lot. I went to 10 different schools as I grew up. Yeah. And so moving around, adjusting to adversity kind of became a built-in part of the DNA, at the time. And then I did a lot of similar stuff when I started working. After my time in the military, I was in the United States Navy. Right. And I got out, I started moving around job to job, learning things, figuring things out like we all do. And for some reason, I wanted to figure out a better way of doing like all the things, just a better way. And that just evolved over the decades of work to something kind of special. At the beginning, it was just, survive, make money, feed all my ex-wives, stuff like that, to kind of get through things. But then at some point it became more like, is there a better way for my kids and grandkids when they go working to get stuff done? And what would that look like? And could I be part of architecting that better future? And that's kind of cool. So all those things contributed, the 20 different jobs at a dozen different companies on 3 continents, Asia, Europe, America, all over the world, learned a lot. And all those different aspects, all that change, all those failures, all that adversity, all that screwed upness kind of got me to this better place of saying, you know what, let's figure this out.
Brilliant. And just as some examples, what are some of those 20 odd jobs that you had in those dozen companies? What sort of things did you do?
Before I formally started working, I was in the Navy, right? In the Navy, I was it's called an aerographer. I was an airman. Yeah, aerographer. So I took care of the weather above the water and below the water. So it's a mixture of meteorology, oceanography. Cool job. Easiest job in the Navy. Get on an aircraft carrier. You go outside, you hold your hand out, you look up. You observe the weather. That's kind of the beginner. Observe weather. Right. Later, you get into the advanced form of forecasting. But you see these dark clouds to the west and the wind's coming your way and there's lightning and you're like, okay, in about 10 minutes it's probably going to rain here. That's forecasting, right? And then the most advanced version, of course, is making the weather. We're not too good at that yet, but we're working on it. So that was, the baseline. And then I had all kinds of jobs, flipping burgers in Chicago at a Greasy Joe's, place. And then when I came back to Germany, I worked after the military. I went to airports and I refueled aircraft and loaded up aircraft and did a lot of funky stuff out 3 shifts, boots on with steel tips, and real work, real hard work. And then I said, you know what? Let me program a computer, learn how to do that the American way in Germany. And then I learned how to program these big computers called mainframes.
Nice.
And there's not too many of us left alive. Most of us are dead, buried. It's been that long ago, like 50 years ago,
Yeah.
almost, right? And that got me into the high tech, and then I just progressed from nobody to being in charge
Right.
of the toughest market outside of the home markets of some of these companies, the Dells of the world, the EMCs of the world, the Hitachis of the world. Germany was always a struggle for them, but it was not on a business side, not a struggle for me. From a family side, it was confusing and struggling, but figuring out how to make it fly for those organizations, and learning all their idiosyncrasies and their specific ways, the Dell way, the EMC way, the Hewlett Packard way, the IBM way, the Hitachi way, the Capgemini, like French way, which is very different. So all those cultural influences and business influences kind of helped me see enough different facets of reality to start figuring out, wait a minute, where are the commonalities, where are the differences, and how do you combine, German attention to detail, process orientation with American passion, and then this Asian, long spiritual kind of deepness, of the meaningfulness of life, kind of, that element, plus the American gung ho attitude and the German, execution detail, take over the world kind of thing. So all that kind of helped, and those were all the different places, different companies that I was able to learn from, and break a lot of things, screw up a lot of things, fail on a lot of things. But like my little 6-year-old says, Dad, I said, what? He goes, when we make mistakes. I said, yeah. He goes, yeah, when we make mistakes, we learn. I said, well, that's kind of smart. I said, and I said, Jason Lee, what if we make real big mistakes? He goes, Dad, then we learn a whole lot. So that kind of thing. And I learned a lot. And, the last 15 years with Beyond, kind of experimenting, what are the better ways, and can we try it out and learn stuff and stuff like that? So it's been crazy. I think probably you have had to have that 30 years of craziness to get to the point where Beyond could emerge. Because you kind of got to stand on the giants that came before you, and figure out what is the next step. What is that 1 millimeter further than anyone else has dared to go, which is go beyond.
Yeah, brilliant. And so before we move into that, and I'd really love to hear more about that, the go beyond piece as well. Just going into that element of having that different element of experience. There's so much to be said for starting in a company and 20 years, 25 years experience in that company and moving through. And you get to know that company inside out and know the politics and know the people, know the processes and the culture. But when you've moved from company to company, and I've done this a lot myself, you can bring that different angle, can't you? And once you start pulling all the puzzle pieces together, you can create something that's richer than the sum of its parts in that way.
Yes. Yeah. No, absolutely. It's like a recipe, work on a soup, and the more, variants and the more things you do, you kind of get better at the recipe. And what those pieces help you with is you get faster.
Right.
You get faster at a higher level of impact. Yeah. And in most organizations in the last 30 years, 20 years, 10 years, 5 years, it's more about, how fast can you get, and flexible, which is agile, but how can you kind of adjust to realities? Because there is no good or bad. Realities just are unforgiving. It's just the way life is, kind of, and the same thing for business life. It's just unforgiving. And can you figure out how to deal with a myriad, multiple scenarios of things that are happening at the same time? They're all different, and many of those you've never encountered. Can you understand how to deal with it? And by dealing with it, sort yourself, set yourself, and get better and be more successful, especially when it gets really bad, especially when it gets really crazy. So I think that those abilities are honed in the multitude of that diverse environment. The more diverse environment it is, the better you get. So that helps a lot. And then you get better at stuff, and you figure things out faster, and you start to understand the core of things. You start to understand that there's a source for performance. And it's the same source in Asia, in Europe, and Africa, and the Americas. It's the same source. There's a single source for success of all things. Performance is a version of success, right? But there's that one source. And then when you get close enough to it, you go, dang, this is cool, right? To realize that, to understand that one thing that changes everything. That's kind of cool.
Awesome. And when it comes to looking at the Beyond Company, tell us a bit more about that in terms of who you help and how you help them.
Yeah. So, our journey was finding the source, right? And it took us, I don't know, 5 or 6 years. We find the source. And one of my guys goes, yo, Patrick, now that we found the source, it's kind of cool. Yeah, we're all celebrating. And then he goes, well, how do we turn it on? I said, oh, shit. That's another 6 years. Figure that one out, right? So, but understanding that, so our mission is to find the source, find a way to turn it on, but then architect a new operating model for organizations.
Right.
Because if you just try to improve the existing models we have, you can get a little bit of improvement. You can make things a little bit better. You can perform better, right? But you're stuck in the paradigm of the limitations of the existing model because you don't break out of the model. You don't go beyond the model, right? So for us is, can we architect a transformation engine, right? Because if you can architect it in a green field, that doesn't help British Telecom. They're stuck right in the old model. So what you need is a model that you can architect into existing models that transitions them into the new model, right? Into this beyond idea of understanding the source of performance, the source of getting shit done, and activating that source in a regular manner across 100% of your organization. That activates greatness. That activates agility. That activates creativity, innovation. That activates the ability to spin on a dime, no matter what the world throws at you, right? So that probably was the initial part of what the Beyond Company was about, was coming out of those types of big organizations in the old model, understanding it's not about the new model. It's about a transition engine that can transition you from the old into the new in an almost seamless manner. And then you can execute in this new world, this new operating model, using this very small operating system that ignites the human potential, because we organize and design and execute. It's luckily enough not the technology and the AIs and the robots doing that yet. We are the architects, right?
Yeah.
And if we can ignite that part of it, the rest will figure itself out. So we don't need to know what the new models are, or organizational forms, or technologies, or processes that support a more performing organization. We don't care about that. We activate at the source with an operating system that can do that. And as you apply it, all these other new things will emerge. So for us, the primary first phase was architecting the model that would work in any setting, any organization, any language, any culture, in minutes. That was kind of the design spec, can you do that? And then once you've got that model, then my personal ambition is to bring it to the biggest organizations in the world that have the biggest issue, right? The bigger you get, the more the old model slows you down and becomes a problem, right? And then you think the problem is your people, and it's not. The problem is your model, right? And so my ambition is really that the largest organizations in the world, the largest enterprises that have a big impact on society, that they become the pioneers, which usually is that they're not, but that they become the pioneers of the transition from a profit-based model to a people-oriented model, from a dollar value to human values oriented model. And that's the machine that we've been building.
Fantastic. And in terms of the Beyond Company, then, what sort of size is your team, and what are the typical sort of clients that you work with? Where are you in the world? I know we were having a chat before this recording. You're saying you're going to be in the UK soon. Is it mainly Europe? Do you go global? What is it?
Yeah. So there's like a couple dozen guys that do this well, right? And we've in the last 10 years, so 10 years ago we started applying after 5 years of figuring it out, right?
Okay.
So, 100 organization in dozens of countries around the world in more than 3,000 sessions.
Wow.
Okay. So we've been able to experiment, not even, we're doing it, we're applying it, but figuring out how to do it in an efficient, repeatable, and scalable way. That's been the journey. Like 10 years ago, it was like a 2-day offsite for executives, and then they got into that modus and it was like, wow, this is so cool. And then we crunched that down to 2 hours, which was kind of cool. You could scale out to more of the leaders, more of the managers, 2 hours, but we always designed it for the people, right? But there's thousands of people, right? So crunching that down to 20 minutes was a big deal through the pandemic, that there's a 20-minute version that works in physical space, digital space, that kind of activates that human factor. So that whole journey of crunching down to now we're at about 5 minutes and 55 seconds to turn on the greatest element of human performance and organizational performance. It's crazy, like 5 minutes, 50, how the hell does that work? Right. So that's kind of the engineering challenge, right? Because if you want a transition machine or an engine, it's got to be really, really small. Right. And you got to insert it into many, many places at the same time. So it has to be kind of like a small routine that happens at the front of every meeting. I was going to do it at the front of this, but we'll do it at the back end. Right. And then you can talk about it.
Yeah.
But it's really, really cool when you experience it because it has that instant, immediate effect on the group and on the people, on the individuals that use it. And then boom, we're in our highest possible state on a Monday morning. Or on a Tuesday afternoon, it doesn't matter. So engineering that thing down to be just a couple minutes that you have like a micro leverage. It's a micro mechanism that instantly turns on trust. And everybody knows in a performance-based environment, trust is essential ingredient. Well, if you can turn trust on in 180 seconds at scale for 100,000 people at once, then you just have tapped into one of the most valuable things in the world, because trust and relationships and that human factor is the most complicated and toughest thing that we've ever tried to do extremely unsuccessfully. Really bad at this. The Gallup studies that, as engagement is maybe 15% worldwide, so we're bad at this. But if we had a 180-second mechanism that turns it on and takes engagement, from 15% to 86%, right? Would that be a good idea? Yes. Would you want to use it? Yes. Would you want to use it for just 1% of your people or for all your people? For all your people, right? So that thinking is what we've been architecting towards. And now we have access to that. And we're going to bring it to every corner of the world. My personal ambition, as I said, are the biggest organizations in the world.
Right.
But this, of course, works for any size organization, because when you get bigger than 50, it starts to break down. Right. And how do you keep that alive? That aliveness, that energy, that trust, that connection, that ability to kind of go at things with confidence, optimism, hope, all those good positive factors. Right. So that is kind of cool. And at some point, 10 years down the road, 20 years down the road, everyone in the world will do this, because it makes a difference. It doesn't make a difference. It makes the difference in your day. And if it does that every day in your life, and as organizations, it's the most important element for us is our people. So how do we care for that in small, 5-minute chunks?
Amazing. This concept in its own right, even if it's a 2-day offsite, is fantastic. But as an engineer myself and a facilitator, to take the process of getting that down from a 2-day event to 20 minutes, but now down to that 6-minute piece is a fascinating one in its own right. Really, that must have taken a lot of self-reflection, a lot of looking at like what's actually of value here, where's the nugget. And what can we strip out that just isn't necessarily adding to the whole equation? So how was that process for you and your team? I'm assuming it wasn't just yourself going through that.
Yeah. I think there's a core of about 100 people in the last 10 years that have worked really, really hard at this. Right. And what we do is we brief, we prepare, the current version of what we think works,
Yeah.
and then we apply it, and then we debrief it, like what worked, what didn't work, what did we learn, what would we do different,
Yeah.
and we change it. And we've done that more than 3,000 times ourselves. Just me. Those are the 3,000 I've been involved in. If you add up all the different folks in the world that have started doing Beyond, it's taught at universities. There's this book written by two professors called Beyond Leadership, right? In Switzerland. They wrote that book. They believe in that thing. They think this is the future of digital agile organizations. This is the game changer. I don't say that. Those two professors say that, and they're Swiss. Swiss don't normally say shit like that. Americans, we say that all the time. We're the greatest. But when the Swiss not only say it, they write it down in a book and tell you why it works and the science behind it and give you real life examples of where it's worked. That's a big deal, right? And what it means is it does work in any setting, any culture, any language, any place you want. And being able to architect it down, that was a lot of work. For 3 years of the last 15 years, I had an academy at my home, like a school.
Right.
Every weekend we'd sit down, and it was about 85 people went through that in 3 years, right? From all over the world.
Yeah.
There were some, Eastern philosophies in there, Hindu, Shinto, Buddhist, Christian, all that, all those philosophies around religion, maybe you could call it, right? And then Western stuff around agile, Six Sigma, lean process, design thinking, theory U, holacracy, you name it. We took everything that the world had yet invented, and we condensed all those different practices down to the core. What are they really doing? What's the core that makes them work or not work, make them successful or not successful? And that's 10 years of hard work, right? And when it don't work, you learn the most, as my kid has told me, right? Big mistakes, we learn the most, right? But we kept changing it almost on a weekly basis over the course of that 10 years. So we didn't go from 2 days to 20 minutes in a day, right? That was a 10-year journey. Thousands of sessions in dozens of organizations in a lot of different countries. And learning a lot. What happens when 3 people go through this machine and they all 3 speak different languages and don't understand each other's language? Can you still activate the source? And the answer is yes. How crazy is that? Because the source is not triggered by words. So anybody that writes books or does podcasts or anything else, words are kind of nice, but they're not what triggers the source of performance, right? It's there's something else, very subtle, very deep, very powerful. Right. And when you pay attention to it, it rewards you with energy, joy, and the willingness to do things that you haven't done before, which is courage, right? So well done.
Superb. Oh, loving it. And we'll make sure that we've got links to that book in particular, but all sorts of different things we'll link to in the show notes as well to make sure you can connect to that stuff. Oh, amazing. And so just to switch things on a bit and maybe just to go back to one of the points that you raised there in terms of who you would like to work with. If you had an opportunity to take this to any individual team or organization and help them perform, who would you want that to be?
Well, top of my list is probably Microsoft. Okay. Because they started with an OS, an operating system for personal computers, right? X86, we called it, before it became 386, 46, all that good stuff, right? So for me, also with what Satya Nadella tried to bring in or is bringing into the Microsoft culture around empathy, growth mindset, and the things that they do, I think it's an ideal environment to bring something innovative and game-changing into play with someone that understands technology, collaboration, which is a big part of Microsoft's purpose to help us be better together, kind of, And so for me, that's kind of like a lighthouse project down the road. Of course, all the other most valuable companies in the world, Apple, Amazon, Google, all those organizations that think they're at the top of the pyramid, right? Which they are, of the current pyramid. They're at the bottom of the beyond pyramid, right? Because technology, hardware, software, internetware, that's a very valuable global market. But humanware, activating human potential at scale, at a touch of a button, That's the next new thing.
Right.
Like my kid once said, I'm going to England a lot, right? He goes, Dad, he's trying to figure out what I do because he understands it already. He's 6 years old. And he said, yeah, Papa, I got it. You have joy in a jar and you're
Amazing.
bringing it to them in the factories.
Yeah.
And then they open that jar and they got joy,
Yeah.
right? So that human factor as a service
Mm.
at scale, at a touch of a button, as I said, that's a beautiful future because that's worth so much more than a piece of HR software or a Salesforce.com CRM software.
Mm.
This is a software that activates the softest ware, which is the hardest ware
Yeah.
that we have, the human factor at scale at a touch of a button. So it's a very interesting opportunity to open up something that all the facilitators in the world have been trying to do, right? And trainers and coaches. But if you could do it at scale at a touch of a button for 153,000 employees at Microsoft on a Monday morning around the world, and just wow, even contemplate the ability to do that in that 6 minutes is a big deal. So I think that would be kind of the target audience for me personally.
Yeah.
Now a lot of other beyonders that we call ourselves, they got a lot of other markets they want to go after. There's so much potential in healthcare.
Right.
To help doctors and nurses and first responders because they're in very stressful environments, have like an antidote for that and for the smile to be on their face, even though they're confronted with some of the saddest, most challenging situations in the world, right? So can we help all those places that are helping others is another part of the journey and the focus to say, yes, let's get this to those people that need it most, that are stressed and at the end of their rope, and that 5-6 minutes, a couple times a day is the dosage that they need to be stronger and to be more resilient and to be more there, be more present, and to be more joyful for the folks they're working with and working for.
Yeah. Oh, awesome. And switching that on its head a little bit, if you were able to sit down with any individual or team or and learn from them, maybe have a cup of coffee, have a drink with them and sit down and just talk to them and listen to what they've got to say about what they do and how they do it, who might you want that to be in order to, for you to lift your own performance?
Yeah, so I'm going to show you who they are. There's a list of them. I haven't counted the number, but there's this book.
Nice. So that's the Oxford Handbook of Positive Organisational Scholarship.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I would guess there's about 100 names in here. It's a big book, as you can tell, a lot of chapters, right? So all of these folks, really smart people in the world, over the course of 10 years, they consolidate all the science and research on activating organizational human potential, right? Everything from curiosity to motivation, engagement, joy, all those different factors that a lot of people talk about. They get it. These guys get it. So I'd like to sit down with these people and really, really deeply talk about how we can establish positive organizational scholarship as a foundation of organizational design for every organization in the world, and learn from them. And then I'm the architectural engineer. All those learnings I will build into the machine,
right?
Because I've built the base of the machine already, right? So we could build all that learning into the machine at scale, right? At some point, millions of people, maybe hundreds of millions, like Zoom can reach hundreds of millions, right? Yeah. So that we could, at a touch of a button, take all that learning and everything connected to that learning. So there's probably hundreds of books connected to this one book, right? Yeah. And then, understand my only purpose is to build a machine that can incorporate all of that learning and turn it on anywhere in the damn universe if needed, right? So that's kind of my life purpose. I want to keep going, keep improving the machine, keep getting more learnings inside, and then give this machine to those groups of people that are trying to solve the biggest problems in the world. Right. Because if they can't collaborate at scale with all those very positive human attributes as a group, we're not going to solve hunger. and or war and peace, in the world, unless we get that quality of connection between everyone, every day, all the time. Then you're not throwing bombs at each other for sure, right? Because then we really feel like brothers and sisters, right? So that ability to bring it together, learn from the most learned, because I didn't even go to college, right? So I didn't learn a lot, but I learned how to build this machine. And there's no one in the world that can do this better. And I don't mean that in an arrogant way. I mean, because I've dedicated my life to it, and all the things I learned from meteorology to mainframe system operating systems to all the stuff I did at those dozen different companies around the world. That was all part of learning enough to begin, to start, right? And writing bestseller books, all that stuff I've done, right? That was just the entry ticket to say, now you can be the beginner of the beginners of the most basic thing in the world, of how to turn on and ignite the human spirit at scale, bro. That's my job.
What a job. What a job. And one sort of final question from me on this front is, who helps you perform, apart from your son, who, if anybody wants to hire him off the back of this, it sounds like a kid wise beyond his years. So let's see if we can get him some work off the back of this as well. But who helps you perform, and how do you get your performance up there?
Yeah. So definitely Jason Lee. We got to check mark that, right?
Yeah.
And he always wanted a kid that looks like Bruce Lee. And Jason Lee, he looks like Bruce Lee because his mom's from Vietnam.
Right.
So I learned a lot
Yeah.
from his mom, the Buddhist principles, and also the fighting spirit of Vietnam. We Americans kind of get it. They whooped up on us.
Yeah.
I understand why,
Yeah.
because the collective strength of all is always more powerful than the strength of the big guy, right? Yeah. So we kind of band together against the bullies, and then we're going to be okay, right? So a lot of learning in my closest circles. I learned a lot from my dad. He was a drill sergeant and the youngest command sergeant major in the history of the United States Army. Wow. He then led the non-commissioned officer academies around the world to teach the next generation of leaders in the United States Army. He is one of the stepfathers of what we call VUCA.
Wow.
My dad is one of the Mr. VUCAs. Volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous.
Yeah.
I grew up with that. So you got to imagine the things I grew up with as a kid.
Yeah.
That only 40, 50 years later started to emerge in normal civilian life, that being able to deal with VUCA environments. I grew up learning from the Mr. VUCA, by the way, right? So there's a lot of learning early in my life that influenced my journey of being able to stand strong in the stormiest of storms, face adversity, even when it knocks you down and almost kills you, to get back up and to stand stronger again and again and again, over and over throughout my life. So that was a good base operating system for me to learn there, right? And then learning in all those different companies, all those different settings, again, by falling down and getting back up and falling down and getting back up, but then learning how to help people stand stronger, learn from each other, allowing them to make the mistakes and not preach at them. Let them fall on their face, not die. Don't let them die, but let them, kind of learn like, ow, why didn't you tell us that? Well, shit, you needed to learn that kind of, so I let you kind of go, knowing that you're not going to die, right? So all those different environments. But today, I learned the most where we apply with clients and customers and friends. We use our own medicine all the time, every single day. When we work together, we use this little module. We call it Ignite now. So this Ignite by Warm Space module, this little tiny piece of technology, probably the smallest app ever written, that's going to have the biggest impact that any piece of software has ever had on humanity. Isn't that crazy? No, so that kind of stuff, by taking your own medicine over 3,000 times, has transformed me as a human being. My wife helped me become better. She always said at the beginning, she says, honey, I go, what? She goes, I've noticed that I believe you must have been a really bad person in your prior life. She's Buddhist, so kind of believes in that. I go, yeah, why would you say that? She goes, well, because you're trying so hard to be good in this life. I said, honey, I got to tell you, I was bad before you met me. I'm trying to fix it in the same life, so I'm trying to fix that, right? So all those different aspects, people look at me now
Yeah.
I'm almost 60 years old, right? I'm looking younger than 10 years ago when I was almost 50. Like, what's
Yeah.
going on with you? I said, I'm taking the juice, man,
Yeah.
from the source, like the fountain of youth kind of thing.
Yeah.
So that gives me energy and not just passion, but compassion,
Right.
the ability to be there for others, to take them as they are, to face that adversity of anger and hate and whatever they're trying to throw at you, and turning it back into love and goodness and appreciation and gratitude for who they are. So that learning of the source, which is connected to human kindness and the ability to be there for others. And it kind of, as you immerse yourself into that world, you get unlimited strength. You don't, when you get into vulnerability, you become invulnerable, right? Because you're in vulnerability, you're invulnerable, right? So these powers are superpowers, and they're inside all of us. And using our own magic juice kind of turns it on for us ourselves. But as you've seen from the learning journey, from my dad, Mr. VUCA, to my wife, you must have been a bad person in your car. She's a bodhisattva, so she knows what she's talking about. And now just applying and learning and breathing and being present and understanding, because in our format, we only ask one question. There is only one question, the most asked question in the history of the world in the last hundreds of thousands of years. When we encounter each other after the greeting, we always ask, how are you? In all the different languages and cultures we've been in. And I know in the Midlands, they just go, all right. And the answer to that is all right, which is basically saying, I'm all right. Are you all right? I'm all right. Are you all right? Which is a lot shorter than how are you finding you, which is the California version, right? So the Midlands, England version, all right. I love the hell out of that. Yeah. It's a short greeting, it has all that shit in there, but no one listens to anybody about what's going on, right? But so for us, the how are you, adding that really right behind it, right. And the protocols associated with how we do that at Beyond, that's where that ignition effect kind of comes into play. And you learn every single time you apply the process. You learn from each other in the deepest, most profound manner possible, in this protocol of 10 acts of human kindness in 180 seconds. Like, wow. And some people go, damn, I haven't done that in the last 180 days. And I just did it in 180 seconds with a partner, right? It was really cool. So I think that component is where we learn from each other, where we go deeper, where we kind of go beyond, where we know we're in a safe place. We feel that strength emerge, even if we're in a bad place, because someone's there for me, listens to me deeply, and gives me some goodness back from the heart. And that's amazing to observe it happen when I'm at these factories where they just build tile and brick and tile, and it's really muddy and dirty. And they learn how to stand together and go through that. How are you now, really? And give each other that strength in the toughest of jobs where things break down every 60 minutes and stuff like that. So it's a great opportunity, and you really go places within yourself and with others by doing that. Thank you.
Yeah. Oh, amazing. How do people find out more? How do people connect with you, with the Beyond Company? Where do we go? How do we get in touch?
There you go. You can search Patrick Beyond. You'll always find me there.
Yeah.
And the Beyond Company, the Beyond.company is the website where you'll see most stuff. And I'm on LinkedIn, so there's a LinkedIn link. Yeah. I don't use LinkedIn. I don't use any social media because it's not social. And if I want media, I'll watch football. Yeah. Right. So entertainment, whatever. But I have a profile up there so people can see it. They can, if they want to connect. I don't have a lot of connections on there. I probably want to turn them all off because I don't believe in those platforms so much. Right. But you can find stuff, right? But mostly, the book, you'll give them a link to that. Yeah. The little app, you and me will try it out, the Ignite app, after the end of this. Cool. And we should have done it at the front because you would have said, holy shit, this is kind of cool. But yeah, I think that those connections, the Ignite by Warm Space app, the books, the different books I referred to, you'll link to folks to that, the Beyond website, and LinkedIn. I guess that covers most of the bases. People will learn a little bit more about it. And give it another 6 months when that technology goes public, then you're one click away from the source of human goodness.
Wow. What a way to end. Really appreciate that, Patrick. And I mean, let's throw it out there. Do you want to go through this now? Do you want to, in the recording? Do you want to connect off the back of this? How do you want to?
Yeah, well, it always works on our smartphone.
Okay.
So we won't be doing it here. We'll be doing it on our smartphone together.
Right. Okay.
But what we could do is we could spend that 5 minutes, 55 seconds. You can pause your recording here, or you can just pause and say, "Oh, okay, the guys kind of went off screen, experimented with something crazy, came back, and then all we do is briefly reflect on how the hell that was."
Yeah.
How's that?
Let's do that then.
Let's do that. Okay, cool.
Brilliant. So we've just been through the Ignite. That's the Ignite exercise we've just been through, right? Fantastic. And I think there's one word that we were asked to sum up with, and we both came up with the same word, didn't we? So we both felt really energized by the process of what we do. And I feel really grateful for just the opportunity to have gone through that. So how was that experience for you, Patrick?
Thank you. Really? Really, right? Yeah. No, absolutely. How much closer you can get in such a brief amount of time, where you actually feel that brotherness kind of pop up between the two of us, or sisterness, or brother-sisterness, or whatever. So the speed and the depth and the power of it, really high, because there's a lot of things going on in our lives right now that can bring us down or get us worried or concerned. But if we have a 5-minute process that gets us energized, which is connected to joy, we're kind of happy about it and we feel energized. That's a big deal, And so for me to get closer to you from that perspective on the smartphone, like a FaceTime, and to feel it, and then to see the analytics and the numbers of how much better we're feeling. And the word we both shared, we surprised each other, because you can only enter one word at the end of the experience. And we both entered energized, which is like energize in Star Trek, which is the transporter word to get you from one state to the next, or one place to the next place. And Ignite is the app by Warm Space, also a cool word for the developers that developed the app, that they're called Warm Space. That's kind of nice. We were in that warm space. So I feel that connection, that energy. And what we can imagine is, what if everyone could feel like this every day? Thank you.
Oh, well, an absolute pleasure having you on today, and an absolute pleasure going through and sharing that experience. So as I say, I will put all of the connections, all of those links to everything from the books to your website and LinkedIn, all the rest of it, that go into the to the show notes. In the meantime, Patrick, an absolute joy to have you on today. Really appreciate you coming on, and really appreciate you helping me through that experience. And I would encourage anybody to connect, go and find out more about Patrick and the Beyond Company, and get in touch. So Patrick, thanks for being on today.
Thank you, Paul. A pleasure, a privilege. It was joyful, uplifting the whole time. Sometimes you get a little melancholic if you talk about how screwed up your life has been when I have to review my journey, kind of. But it's okay, because it's part of what made me who I am. So I'm also grateful for that, for our connection, for your example of the "How are you really" that you posted on LinkedIn, which was beautiful. A real life, kind of everyday thing that can happen. And and I look forward to anyone out there that wants to hook up. My phone maybe rings twice a day. 50 years ago, it was ringing 25, 50 times a day, because it was the only way for us to communicate and connect. So I'm open for phone calls and messages, and taking the next step for people out there to help people perform and beyond. So thank you.
Thanks for listening to today's episode. If you liked what you heard, then please give the podcast a rate, review, and share. I'm Paul Teasdale, and from sausage making to banking, oil and gas to Formula One, I help people perform. If you'd like to find out more and have a conversation, contact me via helpingpeopleperform.com.